Hello geometry students. In this video we are going to learn about ordering the sides and the angles of a triangle. So at the end we will know how to order the angles of a triangle just from knowing information about its sides, and we will also be able to order the sides of a triangle just from knowing information about its angles. Now when I say order, that means we'll be able to tell which side is the smallest or which angle is the smallest, and the medium and the largest. Even if we don't have information about those specific items, but we know about the other, meaning sides or angles, then we can determine other information. So how do we order the sides and the angles? Well, the smallest side is across from the smallest angle, and the largest side is across from the largest angle. So that's when we know information about the angles, then we can determine which side is the smallest and which side is the largest. And also, if we know information about the sides, we can determine which angle is the smallest or the largest, because the smallest angle is across from the smallest side, and the largest angle is across from the largest side. So what does that look like when we try to actually solve something? Okay, let's take a look at this example right here. Which is the largest angle of the triangle? Which angle is the smallest? So what we can tell about this triangle is that the sides are different measures. We have one that's 6 centimeters, one that's 8 centimeters, and one that's 10 centimeters. We have a nice scalene triangle right here. We don't know any information about the angles, but we can figure out which one is the largest and which one is the smallest just by putting our sides in order and then looking at the angle that's across from that. So I always like to label mine with the 6 is the smallest, and then this 8, I'm going to do a different color, that is the medium length side, and then the largest side right here. And then if we want to know what is the largest angle of the triangle, the largest angle is across from the largest side. So if our largest side is right here, then across from it, over here, this angle T, this is our largest angle. And the angle that's across from it or opposite is one that does not touch this side right over here. It could not be angle S and could not be angle R because those two angles include this side as part of it. The one that does not include anything to do with this side is the one that's opposite. So the largest angle is angle T. And which angle is the smallest? Let's look at our smallest over here is this side ST. And across from that, way over here, across from that, angle R, this is our smallest. So the smallest is angle R. And then I always like to talk about the medium side and the medium angle also, even though we weren't asked on this one. If this 8 right here, this is our medium side, then across from it, over here, the angle that is not touching it at all, this would be our medium angle. Okay. And in this example right here, which is the longest side of the triangle and which side is the shortest, here we only know information about the angles, but we can tell which is the shortest side and the longest side and the medium. So the longest side is going to be across from the biggest angle. So once again, I like to label things with small, medium, and large. This one over here, this is my small. And this 50 right up here, this is the medium angle. And so this 100 down here, this is our large angle. So we can tell that across from that, if we want the longest side, it's going to be across from the biggest angle. So this angle right here, which side is across from it? Across from it is this side over here. And this side of the triangle would be side FD or side DF, segment DF. And which side is the shortest? The shortest side will be across from the smallest angle. Our smallest angle is 30 degrees. And then across from that, right over here, this side will be our shortest side. And this is side DE. And we could talk about our medium angle. I always like to talk about that. If our medium angle is angle D, then over here across from it, this side right here, change my pen color there, sorry. Then across from our 50-degree medium angle, this FE would be our medium side. Now please note this doesn't actually tell us how long the side is. In the previous example, we know that angle T is the largest angle. We know that angle R is the smallest angle. We don't know how many degrees they are. This does not tell us how big they are. It just tells us which one must be the biggest, which one must be the smallest. And the same over here. Knowing about the angles, that doesn't mean that this side is 30, the side is 50, or the side is 100. It just means that our longest side has to be across from the biggest angle, and the shortest side has to be across from the smallest angle. Okay, let's do a few more examples. So this is for each triangle, list the angles in order from least to greatest. Always make sure that you're paying attention to whether it asks you to list from least to greatest or greatest to least. This says we want to list the angles from least to greatest. So we know information about the sides. So let's label over here in this one. We've got a 1.8, a 2.7, and 3.9. So this is our small, and 2.7 is our medium, and 3.9 is large. So in order to list the angles, so our small side over here, then across from that, this angle V is our smallest angle. So angle V is smallest, because we're going least to greatest. And then our medium is this 2.7. Across from this side, this angle up here, angle M, would be our medium. And our large, this 3.9 is our largest side right here. So across from that, directly across, this angle O must be our largest angle. So angle V, angle M, and angle O is our order of the angles from least to greatest. Let's move on to number 2. Let's do the same thing. It looks like this 12. This is our small. And it looks like this 16. This is our medium. And this 20 is our largest angle. So, largest side. So when we list our angles, then we're going to list the ones that are across from those. Our smallest side over here is 12. That means over here, angle G is our smallest angle. And for our medium, that's this 16. So across from it over here, the one that's not touching the side, it cannot be used to name the side. This is angle H, that is our medium. And then our largest, this 20 right over here. So across from that, this is our large angle. So when we list them from least to greatest, our smallest would be angle G. Our medium is angle H. And our large is angle K. For number 3, now this time we know we're trying to list the angles from least to greatest. And based on what we know about the angles in a triangle adding up to 180, we know that if this is 90 degrees right here, the other angles must be acute angles. Angle A and angle C have to be acute angles, which means that angle B, our right angle, has to be the largest angle right here. And that means that our hypotenuse has to be the biggest side. So if we want to list our angle, okay, so that means here that I'm going to highlight this time. This is our shortest side right here, and that would be our smallest side. And across from this side, this angle A has to be our smallest angle. And our medium side is 150. Across from that, angle C has to be our medium angle. And then we know that for a right triangle, the hypotenuse has to be the biggest side, that is largest, which means that this 90-degree angle has to be our biggest angle, which fits with what we know about the angles in a triangle adding up to be 180 degrees. So from least to greatest, our smallest is angle A, and our medium is angle C, and our large is angle B. Okay, that was when we knew information about the sides, we could order the angles. Now let's try a few where we know about the angles and we have to order the sides. This time we want to list the sides in order from shortest to longest. And sometimes you'll be asked shortest to longest, sometimes you'll be asked longest to shortest, so make sure to pay attention to what the directions say. All right, so smallest angle right here is 28. This is their small. It's across from that. Side AD is our smallest side. And our medium angle is 62 degrees. That's medium. So across from this side, DE is our medium side. And our largest angle is the 90 degrees right here. So across from that, side AE is our largest angle. For our next one, we have a 21. That's our smallest over here at angle J. Across from that is LI or IL. And our medium angle is 78 degrees. Across from that, this other side over here is IJ. And our largest is 81 degrees. The side that's across from that, it's the other two letters, is LJ. And for our third one over here, this time we have a 76 and an 82, and we have an X. Well, we need to know the measure of that angle to know if it's bigger or smaller than 76 and 82. But we know that the angles in a triangle add up to be 180 degrees, so we can find that missing angle by adding 76 and 82. That gives us 158 degrees. And we subtract that 158 from 180, then we know that this angle must be 22 degrees. Now that we have the angle measures, we can determine smallest, medium, and large. So here is our smallest angle at 22 degrees. So across from that, side BC or CB is our smallest side. Our medium angle is at 76 degrees. Across from that, this medium side, which is AC. And our largest angle is 82 degrees. Across from that is our largest side, which is AB. Okay. Well, what if the sides or the angles are equal? So let's talk about a special situation with an equilateral triangle. In an equilateral triangle, all of the sides are the same measure. And on our figure over here, you can see these little hash marks right here. These indicate that our sides are equal. So in this case, if we have to list the sides in order from longest to shortest, they're all the same. We would not be able to list which one is biggest, which one is smallest, because they are all the same. And if we were asked to list the angles in order from smallest to largest, these angles over here, these little marks indicate that our angles are congruent. And if we were listing the angles, they are also all the same. Now in this case, we do know how big those angles are, because if they have to add up to 180 and they're all the same, that means that in an equilateral and equiangular triangle, the angles have to be 60 degrees. So equilateral and equiangular triangles, they're nice, they're all the same. But what about an isosceles triangle? Well, if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite those sides are also congruent. So let's look at this example down here. We have these two little marks right here on our triangle. This mark and this mark indicate that these two sides are congruent. AB is congruent to AC. Then we also know that the angles opposite those sides are congruent. So this one over here, angle C and angle B are congruent to each other. And the second part up here, if two angles of a triangle are congruent, then the sides opposite those angles are also congruent. So in this figure over here, notice that we have two arcs down here indicating that angle B and angle C are congruent. So if angle B is congruent to angle C, then the sides opposite are also congruent. Then that means that side AB is congruent to side AC. Okay, let's do a couple of examples here. What about this one right here? What if we know that we have an isosceles triangle and this angle up here is 40 degrees? Well, if we're trying to find either of these, they have to be the same thing. Because in this isosceles triangle, these would be considered our base angles, and they'd be equal to each other. So we could write an equation if we wanted to. X plus 40 must add up to 180. That gives us that 2x equals 140, and x must be 70 degrees. So this is 70 degrees, and this is 70 degrees also. You could, of course, done that without writing an equation. You could have just said 180 minus 40 is 140, divided by 2, gives 70. Okay, what about in these two problems right here? In this problem, we have an isosceles triangle. These two sides are equal, which means that these two angles must be equal. This 50 degrees right down here is also congruent to this angle right over here, so this one has to be 50 degrees. Now that's not what we were asked to find. We have 50 plus 50 makes 100, and of course we know that all the angles in a triangle add up to 180, so this missing angle up here must be 80 degrees. So 50, 50, and 80 add up to be 180. This example over here, we've got two angles that are congruent. Notice down here, we've got our congruent angle here and our congruent angle here. That means that the sides across from them must be congruent. This x plus 18 and this 12 must be equal to each other also. So 12 equals x plus 18. And then we would solve that, and we would get that negative 6 is equal to x. Is it okay to get a negative number? Well, our sides could not be a negative number, but this says x equals negative 6, which just means if we plugged it in here, negative 6 plus 18, that would equal 12, which is the same thing we had over here. So that's fine. Well, what if we have an isosceles triangle that's turned differently? Now, sometimes students get in the habit of thinking that the bottom angles are congruent to each other, and they're not. We need base angles. If this, if this side right here is congruent to this side, if our markings go right there, then that means that our congruent angles are going to be the one across from it and this one across from it. So this angle is 20, this angle is 20, 20 and 20 makes 40, and if we subtract from 180, that means this must be 140 degrees. And one more problem right here. Here we know that two sides are congruent, and we're trying to find x, but we only know a couple of things. We only know about this 120, and we know about this 3x plus 6. We're trying to find x. What could we do? We don't know how much this other angle is in degrees. Actually, we could find out how much this other angle is in degrees. We know that if these two sides are congruent, that means these two angles must be congruent. Now, that would only tell us 3x plus 6 and 3x plus 6, and that doesn't really help us. But since we know that the angles in a triangle have to add up to 180, then if we do 180 minus 120, that gives us 60 degrees, and these two angles have together to be 60. That means we divide by 2. Each of these must be 30 degrees. This is 30 degrees, and this is 30 degrees. Then we can solve for x. 3x plus 6 equals 30 degrees, which gives us 3x is 24, and x equals 8. And that is how we determine information about sides just based on knowing about angles, and information about angles just based on knowing about sides. If you have questions, be prepared to ask them during class.